All right, so I am super excited that you're here, Dr. Chris Unger, who has not only become a great friend over the last year as we've been discussing the future of education and innovation in education, but he is also a professor at Northeastern, and he's running a doctoral program helping people prepare to usher in a whole new era of education. He teaches experiential learning, and specializes in online experiential learning, no less, as well as the entrepreneurship mindset and innovation and how to create the education all our children need for the future. So welcome, Chris. I'm so happy you're here. I also want to say that I've been very, very impressed with your work of going around to talk and make panels with the most innovative educators in the country. And I know you say that there aren't any big takeaways, but I think there was a very monumental takeaway in that you had this realization about how stuck everybody was in that system. And I'd like to know more about that. But before we do that, I just want to let you know what this is going to be about, this talk today. So the first part is going to be about Chris's experience, and then we're going to go more into what is the purpose of education after all of these conversations and how must that change so we can prepare our children for the future. And then I want to deep dive into experiential learning and how important that is for this generation, and how we can make experiences for children in this now very virtual educational world, so it's just not an endless string of Zoom conversations. All right, so let's get started, Chris, and please let us know how it was interviewing all of those people, those 28 educators that have informed your work.
Well, I mean, it was fantastic. These are people that I admire and look up to, and as the title of the podcast is, the need and opportunity for revolution in education. And I've been saying this for a long time. If I could put on the Beatles song right now, I would, because I mean, what we are doing is such a disservice to not, and it's almost worse than a disservice. I actually think of it as a significant civil rights issue, where not to get too heavy into this, but with the Black Lives Movement and the uncovering and continual uncovering of sort of the way that some are treated and supported and what opportunities they have. I mean, you could actually take that down to the school level. You could take it to the classroom level. I'm kind of going off topic here, but I'm going to go there anyway. It's sort of like, I think about a group of kids and a circle time in a kindergarten class. And I'm not against circle time or kindergarten classes. I like the idea of kids sitting out around a circle and talking with each other. But if one kid is antsy and can't sit still, the kindergarten teacher calls them out and says, hey, you should sit still, which is basically saying there's something wrong with you. Why can't you pay attention? And then the rest of K through 12 education goes like that for a lot of kids. And so we're shaping their viewpoints. And so back to the 28 educators. The point being is we have a system. It's dictated by, as one of them called, a policy regime, which dictates what should be taught. It has, because of a history, we've emboldened sort of the status quo of what school teaching and learning looks like. 7 periods days, teaching science, math, independent of each other, covering curriculum. I mean, the whole thing is broken. I don't want to be going on like a broken record, but I can go on and on. And basically, by the end of the episode 7 of the podcast, and workspace was mentioned, you were mentioned, Cath, is like it's like nearly impossible to go in. You have to upend. It's like the architecture is so broken. Like it's not about like, well, let's change the color of the walls, or let's take a wall out, or let's, you know, create a new doorway. You need to like tear apart the entire house and rebuild from the ground up. It is so broken. I guess that is just, I guess one of the biggest things is just to affirm and reaffirm the fact that the system is so broken, and I don't even, you almost have to you have to create a brand new, and we've talked about this, we need to create a brand new ecosystem that people are going to say, I do not want to live in this world anymore. Mm-hmm. I don't like being called out during circle time. I want to have a place where I can build Legos, go out into the woods, build a fort. I want to be a teacher who sees the innate genius and creativity of children and support them. And I don't want to live in this ecosystem anymore. But the unfortunate thing, and I'll shut up here shortly, is that all of the public monies, which are supposed to be serving the public good, go to that broken system. So now, if you're going to create a new ecosystem, you know, how do we make the economics of it work is one of the biggest issues. I don't know if I answered your question right. I just wanted to reaffirm that the biggest thing I got out is that I want people to here, I'm going to do this. Okay, Cath? I don't know.
Yeah, go for it.
See, you ready?
Yeah.
I'm going to ask you a question, and everybody else can about this. So maybe you've heard this puzzle before, so it's not going to work if you have. So the question is, what is something that people buy to eat, but never eat it?
I don't know.
Take a couple of guesses.
Oh, but never eat it. I don't know, like, oh, I can't think of it, Chris. Give me a clue.
Okay. Well, a fork and knife.
Oh, yes. Yes, it's because of my convergent thinking.
Well, but this is my point. This is my point.
Mm-hmm.
We all are like everybody, parents in particular, teachers, leaders, educators, policymakers. You can't even, when you say, let's do teaching, learning, and schooling later, you're still stuck. You cannot get out of your own mindset. And I think that is the most incredible thing that we need to be doing right now, to tell you the truth, is gathering people and say, how do I break out of the mindset in the box and the framing that I have to completely like think about doing something entirely differently? And then what is the that's benefiting, more so benefiting youth and adults and our society in a far better way than we are right now? And then how do you build the ecosystem to do that? And that's the reason I went camping with my family last week, and we were going through with my grandson, who's 6, and these little fun puzzles around the campfire. And I just thought, wow, this is such a good example. We can't get out of our own way. But most people in the ecosystem, they've got a job, they need to pay the bills, they want to support their families. And so the ecosystem is almost reinforces itself.
Right.
So you have reinforcing expectations that maintain the ecosystem. And I guess if you don't mind, I'll go a little more long-winded here. I do not want to privatize schooling, but the private and even nonprofit world, the others incentivize innovation. There is no incentivization for innovation in our ecosystem. There's, what I mean by true innovation is not, painting the room red instead of white, or it's sort of like, it's not saying, let's paint our horse and buggy white, or let's put push buttons on the landline. What if we have a car? What if we have a phone? And for that matter, part of one of the podcasts was you had DOS system machines, and Microsoft had a hold on all the Excel spreadsheets and Microsoft Word and all this stuff. And the beauty of the iPhone, when Steve Jobs created and Apple created it, is it said, we're not going to be the only ones that are building the apps. We're going to basically unbundle and unbridle and unleash the opportunity for anybody and everybody to create new options and opportunities. And they created an ecosystem where this vibrant, creative unbundling and creation of apps and existed in the palm of your hand.
Right.
We need that for youth. We need that for families. This is what you're trying to create. How do we put it in the hands of families? But
Yeah,
I think, but the first part, is that it's scary. It's completely new. It's sort of like you're going into Alice in Wonderland, where everything is fixed. Well, my kid hates first grade. What am I going to do? Everybody else is going to first grade. Do I stay home with him or her? I have to work. What am I going to do with my kid? So we need to create, which is what you're working on, I think, is an ecosystem and a doorway for other youth and families to feel like there's a place they can go to where they're not on their own, they're not siloed, and they can access other resources. And they can get the courage to say, I'm breaking out of the current ecosystem. I do not want my kid in the ecosystem. It's killing them. I do not want my kid to die.
Well, these are powerful words, but you're absolutely right. Like, where do we want our children to be marinating, right? As they are growing and learning, exploring, incubating their ideas. We need to be creating those environments so that children and families have a place to go to do that. And saying that, also something that you said reminded me that it is really pretty terrifying when you've been in a system and you suddenly are outside the system. It feels very unsettling. And it's very important for people to have community around them as they're going through that process, especially. We have to empower parents again who have been, really believing that they are doing the right thing, right? And that they want to do the right thing. But sometimes what society has told them is the right thing is not nurturing and is not really unlocking the potential of a child, or it might actually be harming a child.
Yeah, I was at I'm blanking on his last name, Ken, the fellow who runs, I think it's called North Star in
Ken Danford.
Danford North Star out in Western Mass. And I sat down with a mother who brought her middle school child in. And you could feel the pain of the mother. My kid is dying. But I don't want her not to have a community.
Mm.
And there was another mother and a young woman that I met there who moved all the way from central Maine so that she could be part of this community.
Wow.
So, I mean, kids, youth need community. They need social interaction with others. And the worry is if I pull them out of the public school system, who are they going to connect with? And then the real fear stuck in that mindset around the sort of like, well, what are they going to learn? And are they going to learn what they need? And are they going to be able to go to college? You start thinking about, like, I'm leaving the Monopoly board. I'm leaving the Monopoly game board. If I take them off the Monopoly board, what's going to happen? It's like sending them off on a raft on an ocean, like, and you have complete fear. And then, so I actually, we weren't planning on talking about this. We talked about this a little bit last night, Cath. I just said, like, it's really hard. It's really hard for families and youth. I mean, we need to create these other environments where the kids are embraced, they're supported, they can blossom in their own way because the ground is fertile, the relationships is fertile, there's sunlight,
right,
and they can grow. But it's really hard for, pull my, and how do I do that? And so what you're trying to do, I mean, I'm not trying to do this selfish plug for you, but that people need to know that they're going to be okay and that there's another way. And there's other people doing this. It's really, really, really important.
Yeah. So I'm a big firm believer that community actually is the solution. It's not easy, right? So getting a bunch of people together is not easy, and coordinating everything, but it is the real work. It's the purposeful work, and it's what I think is really needed and what is lacking in society in general to make strong families, right? And to make this next generation of agents of change in the world. And I firmly believe, and I see it at Workspace day in and day out, that the kind of medium you want education to happen in, this brine that you want children to be marinating in, is one where there is the growth mindset. And you do have a lot of caring adults in the space that are all very, very different, doing different things in the space because the children are watching, and then they have access to the networks of all these different adults and corresponding opportunities. So, everyone gravitates to their own people, in a space, like little particles, like little clumps of different people. You find your people when you've got enough people in one space. And this commingling and this space that you can create so people can actually be free in the space, but have enough scaffolding so they can, create exactly the education you need, I think is the kind of space that we need, so that they have that professional guidance at their fingertips and community support at their fingertips that they can take as needed, that they're not being forced to transform or to change at a pace that is not right for them, that they can work out what their children need in the space, and then they can get access to all the resources in a space. So that is what we're trying to create at Workspace on the ground and now in the sky, and with the two other platforms that we're creating. And then, of course, we want to extend their opportunities, not just local and national, but globally, and network the co-learning communities. Because if all of these communities put their resources to the middle, we will have a giant resource bank for all of the co-learning communities to pull from, whether that's educators or resources or opportunities or classes or whatever it is, or projects that we can all do together. We can all pull from the well as contribute to the well, and create a really amazing support, deep network of education for our children. So that is my dream, to create all these spaces. And part of that is, we're talking about what kind of learning happens in places like that, right? Where children are free, not necessarily in classes. We've been having fantastic sessions with you at 100 Roads where you're talking about experiential learning and the benefits of experiential learning and why it's such an effective medium, and an alternative to Sage on the Stage style of teaching, and something that you can do quite well in a space like Workspace. So I would like to now talk a little bit about experiential learning and why you teach that, and why you think that that is something that we should be focusing on at 100 Roads and Workspace.
Okay, I will speak to that, but I'm going to just reify that what you're doing is not just empowering local communities to create their spaces for the positive and proactive nurturing of youth, but interconnecting them so that they can be a network learning together, sharing practices, sharing successes. And I would say, I will add that we need to do everything we can to showcase what is possible so that when others see what's possible, they may say, oh, I want that. I want that for my kid. And I'm not jumping off the cliff if I decide to leave the Monopoly board game and I decide to go into a garden.
Mm-hmm.
So, very important.
Okay.
So, all right, experiential learning. So here's the deal. It's kind of like a nice tagline. Some of this you might not like, and I don't have it completely right exactly, but we call experiential learning. The reality is what we're just talking about is learning, period. What does real learning look like? And, there is a stereotype around experiential learning, particularly in the private school world, not in all private schools. But, if you look at private school websites, they'll say, study abroad. We do experiential learning, study abroad, outdoor wilderness hikes, community service, and that's experiential learning. Well, about a year and a half, I flipped it. And, as I thought about it, I thought, well, everything is an experience. This right now is an experience. And to call something experiential learning or not is a fallacy. The question is, if we really think about, the real question is really should be more like, well, what are the qualities of experience that result in different learning outcomes? So a quick and dirty example of this is, if I wanted you to be able to drive a car and I had you read out of a textbook and take a multiple choice test, the question is the outcome that you can drive a car? Well, probably not. You might try, not very good. But as we think about what are the different experiences we can afford youth, or ourselves for that matter, that result in different learning outcomes, the question is, well, what do I want that person to be able to do? And if it's, I want them to be able to drive a car, then the question is, what is the experience I afford that individual so that they can in fact drive a car? Well, probably the best thing they could do is put them in a driver's seat with some scaffolding and some guidance and slowly have them drive a car. So I call it experiential learning because people all want to gravitate towards that. They want to say, oh, I'm interested in experiential learning. But I try to immediately stop and saying, if we reframe it to the question that everything is experience, then the question is, what are the outcomes you're after with youth or others? or for yourself for that matter. And then ask yourself, what are the experiences I should afford them so those outcomes become a reality? So if I want a student to be able to develop a website, make a movie, grow a garden, design and construct a hut, you know, you're hard pressed not to have the student do that. And, you know, for the most part, in classrooms, we have a proxy for learning. There's a certain kind of learning. It's almost like if I want a student to be able to drive a car, it's like school is like taking them to an arcade center and having them play one of those car games. Well, that's not really driving. So in these spaces, in these environments, in these places, I think that the framing of experiential learning, the two most important things, three actually, I'll say more is first and foremost, what is the outcome you're after and why is that important? And how is that of value? Most importantly, to the individual. Second, if that is the desired outcome, what are the experiences I'm affording or providing for that individual? And third, what is my role as a mentor, a guide, facilitator, so that through those series of experiences, that individual is gaining the capacity and competency and agency to think, believe, perceive, and act in those various ways. And so experiential learning is just kind of, it's sort of like project-based learning. Like there's the gold standard in project-based learning. We're going to do project-based learning in our school. We're going to do interdisciplinary project-based learning in our school. Well, I actually would rather just say, hey, let's go make a movie. And then think about, what do I do to help students in making a movie? And in making the movie, they build and they gain the content knowledge and skills and ways of thinking about making movies. I don't have to call it project-based learning. I just have to ask, what is it that I want them to be able to do? And then I put them in a position of doing it. It's as simple as that, which is not to say it's simple, but it is as simple as that.
Yeah, so that brings me to this realization that I had a few days ago about, you know, we have creative studios at Workspace Sky, we have them on the ground. And, you know, we have resources, you know, all around us really as people in our homes and places like that. But I was thinking that rather than seeing, okay, we've got these resources, let's go and 3D print something, maybe we should be saying to our children during this COVID time, or maybe there's a competition, or maybe we get a group together and work out how to do something together, or maybe we could do a community collaboration, maybe build a garden together outside, or we go and, you know, set up a geocaching course, or do some kind of collaborative project together and learn that together. And then when you meet on Zoom calls, you are doing that organization and then you're brainstorming and coming up with ideas and collecting all that information on like maybe Miro board or Jamboard or some tech tool. But your actual meetings are about trying to achieve something together for a particular purpose, and the learning that comes from participating in that kind of situation.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, like, you know, we talked last night, and I was saying, like, I was thinking about creating a class, and I decided that I didn't want to have a class. I decided that I just wanted to see if there were a bunch of students who might want to make X. And if they all say, I want to make X, like, let's do a play. Oh, well, what do you want to have the play about? Well, let's do a play on schooling and current education system as a civil rights issue. okay, how are we going to do that? And then we just get into it. It almost goes back to, I believe, and it's not the only, like one of the best forms of learning is apprenticeship. So find the product, the activity, the engagement. Of course, a big part of this is that youth, anybody is going to want to do it, because if you're not meaningfully engaged, you're not going to learn a lot. Right? So I want to do it. I'm going to do it. You have facilitators. You access people who may know better or provide you with some guidance, which is actually really important to know, is like, well, I can find other people. So what you do is, instead of saying, in a sense, it's almost a fallacy or a problem to say, what do we do in a COVID environment? You just basically say, I'm going to create this thing, and given the conditions I'm in and the resources that are available to me, how am I going to make this thing? And I say, well, there's this really great playwright in San Francisco, and I love his or her plays. You don't have to fly to San Francisco. You just email the person and say, I'm putting a play together. I love what you've done. Can we talk about it? and in a way, you start to unbundle the idea that teaching and learning always has to happen face to face or in the moment, that there is a portal, the internet, YouTube videos, Zoom meetings, and then collaborating around the world. You have a portal to make, create, and do things. And, and that's the most important thing. I think it's really the most important thing you can ask yourself is, what is the thing you're trying to create, make, or do? And then who are you doing it with? And then start getting busy on making those things. And when you start trying to figure things out and access resources and find information and put it together and collaborate, guess what? The collateral outcome, if I could put it that way, is learning.
I know it makes so much common sense. Like it's almost like, people have tried to dissect learning, and you take all the spontaneity out of that. And I'm a big fan of people having heart-to-heart discussions, just like you were saying, reaching out, because these are really meaningful exchanges. And I think for me personally, that was the hardest thing. I was too shy to reach out to other people, and then therefore you become like a little bit of an island, and what you can actually manifest is limited. It's by you being empowered to reach out, and even especially as a child, when they can actually understand that they are powerful manifestors even at a young age, and somehow even some of them have superpowers because no one can say no to a child. So even at a young age, you can be very, very much empowered, and what you can actually achieve can increase tenfold. Let me just say.
Yeah, well, you wanted to get to at some point in this conversation around what is the larger purpose, right? Mm-hmm. And I would argue that the larger purpose is that you figure out through these multiple episodes of creating, making, and doing something and actualizing something, actualizing something in the world, actualizing yourself to be able to do something, that the most essential and powerful thing you could do is to have an individual recognize and feel they have the efficacy and capacity to actualize anything, including themselves. So if I have kids make a movie or do a play or grow a garden or create a social justice movement or whatever it is. Those are all good things.
Mhm.
More important than that is that in 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years, that they have the skills and knowledge of self that at this point in time, what I want to do or actualize is no X, Y, and Z, because I don't know what it is in 20 years.
Mhm.
That fundamentally, that self-knowledge and
Mhm.
that capacity is the ultimate outcome.
Right. I couldn't agree more. So, and that's what we're trying to create at Workspace, is confident and competent humans, right? Who are
Well,
capable.
here's an interesting point though. You I think there's a level, and we don't have to get into this now, but I think there's a level of explicitness you have to have with individuals to recognize that that is the thing that they are learning.
Mhm.
So even if I have them make a car or build a solar power car or grow a garden or whatever it is, there's got to be a degree of sort of reflexivity and reflection, and so that they see what they're developing are those capacities and skills.
Mhm.
Because then once you verbalize it and make it explicit and you see it as like, I'm developing this toolkit, this self toolkit, this self-actualization toolkit,
Mhm.
then you recognize that I can pull stuff out of my toolkit to actualize myself and actualize anything in the world. And that there's a certain degree of explicitness, I think, that needs to be done.
Mhm.
Otherwise, a kid might come out and say, yeah, I had a great time. I did a play, I wrote a book, and they feel like that was that, but they don't recognize that the overarching thing that they're gaining is that they developed a toolkit,
Mhm.
personal toolkit to actualize.
Yeah, anything. Yeah. And just piggybacking on that, Chris, is, a lot of children have anxiety, and anxiety or panic attacks is like when you feel like you're not going to be able to cope, right? Cope with whatever is coming down the pike, and you don't have a way out, so you have a panic attack. But I feel like if you can help children um, feel confident and competent that they can cope with any situation, because they have a toolkit to cope, to know that they have a locus of control over their lives, they're going to be mentally much more secure, and less subject to, panic attacks and other anxiety that a lot of our teenagers have out in the world today. So, yes. So I couldn't agree more.
You don't have to go down this rabbit hole too much, but I do think that there's something important that I should say at this juncture, and kind of to reify some of the points I made very early at the beginning of this. So I'll just make this very real. My grandson is 6 and he just finished kindergarten. Well, do I really want him going back to first grade? Well, I want him to have interaction with other kids, but I really don't want him, like, get this, like 3 or 4 weeks into kindergarten, he escaped out of the school building, running like crazy, arms in the air. And he said, I'm free. I mean, is that what we're doing with kids? So the point I'm making is that, like, I myself am in this situation. I'm like, I work full time. I'm doing my damnedest to change the state of education. I don't want to stop doing that, but I can't stop and then homeschool my grandson, and I don't even know who they would connect with. And so I guess I'm just trying to make this very real, in the sense like that. Now, I'm not just talking about other people. I'm actually talking about myself.
Mm-hmm.
And like, where can I find my local workspace? Where can I find my local community? How do I support such a place being grown or developed? what can I do? Because I can't make it. I don't have the time or the wherewithal. I'm doing too much other stuff.
Mhm.
So I just wanted to like, we often just talk about what other people should do or what other people are thinking. And I always say, I try to turn the mirror on myself and say, well, what the heck are you doing? And what's your experience? And I'm just making it very real. Like, this is a very real thing for me.
Mhm. Right. You have to find, I guess, you have to find your people or his people and work it out.
Yeah.
There needs to be places like Workspace so you can work from there and he can be doing his thing in places like Workspace.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that is the future of education that I'm very excited about. The possibilities of creating more and more environments for children to be free, to explore, create, be in the right marinade, so to speak, the right culture for them to grow into these agents of change in the world who are confident and competent, able to actionize and manifest their ideas. But you know, this is something that we all should be thinking about. You know, how can we make more spaces like that in our communities? And should libraries, for example, or should there be another social structure like a YMCA in towns for those people who have decided that they don't want their child in the public school or conventional school system? So this was a really, really wonderful, interesting chat, Chris, and I really appreciate you coming on today and talking to me about your experiences and the importance of experiential learning, and that we shouldn't actually call it that, should just be learning, and to give us some ideas about, you know, what we could be doing in our spaces for our children. So thank you so much for coming. And I am excited to send this out to all those who came to our crowdcast today and witnessed our epic sound failure. All right, but onward and upward. So let's talk soon.